Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mills. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Kind of wanted to make a few videos kind of on different themes. So stay tuned, let me know if you like it in the comments below, and please hit subscribe or share with a friend you think might subscribe. I've kind of been wanting to do a video like this for a little bit now. And when I saw Jubilee, which is a really popular YouTube channel, you've probably seen videos from them come up on your recommended because they trend a lot. I thought that it would be an easy way to kind of like do it myself. So I'm going to do a response video, or my thoughts about the Jubilee video. Do all adoptees think the same? So a lot of people don't know that I am adopted. I mean, if you're close with me, you know, because I'm not that private about it, but I am adopted. I was adopted when I was 3 days old. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't talk about, really. It's just like, oh, I'm adopted and that's it. But there's a lot of like things that come along with it. So I think, I feel like some of you probably are adopted. It's more common than people think. I just wanted to kind of share my experiences in response to this video and see kind of if any of you feel the same.
I found out I was adopted at an early age. 3, 2, 1, go.
I was in the foster system, so I kind of knew I was going to be adopted, and I wasn't adopted till I was 17, so it's a little older than younger.
I mean, I was adopted when I was like 7 months, so my parents told me before I even could understand, and I feel that's what all parents should do, because if you get older and you don't know and then you figure out, that can really take a mental toll on you.
I found out I was adopted at an early age because my parents are white. How could I not know? How could I not know I was adopted? And growing up on Long Island, I dealt with a lot of racism, like even in like first grade, like people calling me like chink and gook. So I realized that obviously I was different. I would go home and I would ask my parents, like, what does this mean? Like, what is a chink? And they would have to talk to me about it.
I'm also a transracial adoptee, so it was very obvious. On top of that, I also grew up in Olympia, Washington, which is very white. It wasn't strange to talk about adoption. They were always very open about that, and I'm very grateful for that because, again, I do know people who were not told they were adopted, and, you know, it just tears the world apart.
So the first one, I knew I was adopted from a young age. I knew I was adopted since I was like born, like the blonde girl Julia, and I think that's the best way to do it. You're an adoptive parent and you keep that a secret. I think it's so much more damaging when kids find out they're adopted, like when they turn 18 or when they do a DNA test and they're not like anyone else, especially if you're not like a transracial adoptee and you look like your adopted family. I think just being upfront and explaining it in a kid-friendly way is the best way to do it. Luckily my parents did that, so I don't even remember them like telling me. So I'm really grateful that they did that, honestly.
I have a healthy relationship with my adopted family. 3, 2, 1, go.
It's just more personal issues, like family dynamics that we haven't really gotten along. It's never been like, I don't like you because you're adopted. None of that has ever been brought up. It's just side issues, and as I get older, I really distance myself from them because as I'm becoming my own person, my like views of the world and what I believe in are drastically different than theirs. So I think that's where our relationship has kind of proven to be a lot more distant.
My adoptive dad passed away about 7 years ago. I had a really great relationship. You know, he was the person who raised me, taught me, you know, how to be a good person. Me and my older brother, I think we kind of bounce around it, but I think the reason why we're not as close as brothers should be is because we're two adopted people.
I mean, every family's gonna have problems, but for them literally taking me in when I'm not theirs and they really have no responsibility to me, and they've given me a life, they've helped me go through college. I've always felt kind of bad to either speak my mind compared to my sister, who's like their biological kid. And even though I know if I spoke my mind, they wouldn't say anything about me being adopted, but because they've like done so much for me, I subconsciously just felt bad bringing stuff up and talking about it because I was just so grateful.
Good relationship with my parents. Could it be better? Absolutely. Despite our differences and despite some things that happened, they would die for me and that they've sacrificed so much for me. That phrase, blood is thicker than water, I'm like, what? No, like, just look at people who are adopted. Like, they're my family. I don't even use the word adopted parents. Like, that's insulting to me. Like, they're just my parents.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that blood is thicker than water thing. No, I think whoever you want to be your family, whether it be friends or your adopted family or whoever, that's your family. I have a lot of friends or people I know who are not close at all with their parents and they're like blood related.
I want a relationship with my birth family. 3, 2, 1, go.
I guess for like a long time, I had no idea who they were. The only thing I really got was like papers and like, stuff my mom said. And so what I found out was my mother developed a opioid addiction. Even when I was in the womb, she was drinking, Hennessy. The reason why I'm at somewhat disagree and not strongly disagree is because there's still a sense of wanting because I have no reference to say, you're my mother.
For me, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Like, I feel like if you share DNA, that doesn't mean that they love you. I'm not like mad at my birth parents for like giving me up because I feel like they did it for like giving me a better life, and for that, like, I'm grateful. And my adoption was closed, so I've never like seen or like been able to meet or talk, and like I feel like that's fine.
Similar situation. Some people have an open adoption where I feel like that's way more common now, where they can like see the birth family or have cards or contact of some kind. But mine was closed. But my parents had all the information and paperwork and whatnot and met my birth mom. I have met her when I was like 21. I think I met her and my half sister. And then when I was like 23 or 24, I met my half brother. So I did want to meet them just because I'm such a curious person. Like, I didn't feel like anything was like missing in my life with my family because we're super close and I love them and they're my parents. But I'm always curious about things. So, especially when I found out that I had a half sister, I feel like I really wanted to meet her, and I'm glad that we did because now we have a good relationship and I have a good relationship with my half brother. It was just more for like curiosity, I think, than I felt like this like longing feeling.
It really wasn't until actually just a few years ago that I decided I'm actually ready to reach out to my birth family, and I had a closed adoption. So it was very, very hard to track down all this information, and agencies are closed after 27 years and all this stuff. But I did eventually find her on Facebook, and we have reached out. We talk on the phone now, so we have like kind of a basic communication. I kind of realized that I kind of felt fulfilled. I didn't really feel like I needed to do a whole lot more. I think eventually down the line, once I get the rest of my life together, I will like to go down there, meet them and meet all my siblings and all that stuff. But right now, I kind of feel okay.
My adoption was through an agency too, but and it was also closed. And when I was, I had the information and names and stuff from the files, but we just like had no contact through my life. So I found my half brother on Facebook in high school, and we would talk like every once in a while through Facebook, and he had no idea about me. So that was awkward. And then long story, I didn't reach out. I reached out to my half sister, my senior year of college, right like before I graduated. And that's when we met them. And then the following year we met my half brother. If you don't have the name, I don't even know how you go about it, honestly. Even with the name, it was super hard. I totally support anyone who wants to meet their birth family or who doesn't. I think my brother's adopted too. So we're not like blood related, and he has no interest in meeting his adoptive or his birth mom at all. So, and my mom's talked to her. So it's like personal preference.
I struggle to connect with my cultural heritage. 3, 2, 1.
Growing up, I would have been strongly agree. I was literally the only black person in my town, so I had no reference of what black people were doing or what black culture was. And I did go through a lot of the, oh, you talk like a white girl, you're an Oreo, or you don't know every Tupac song, so you're not black enough. Like all those kind of stereotypes of what black people are supposed to be. But for me, that just kind of pushed me to learn more about black culture and read up on our history and all that.
Because I'm white, I didn't face what you guys face, but I was also adopted from Russia. Because I was told from a young age that I was adopted, I got to celebrate my Russian culture and heritage.
I started at strongly agree, and then you mentioned struggle is in the present, and that's what's happening now. I grew up in a very rural town in Illinois. From a young age, I was just very opposed to being Asian. I was opposed to being Chinese. I didn't really suffer from racism really, which I feel very blessed and lucky for, but I still struggled with myself. I was like, I don't like being Chinese. I'd lie. I'd say, oh yeah, my parents got divorced. One of them's half. I'm half. I don't really look half, but whatever. And then it wasn't until high school, like my sophomore year, I was like, I need to get really connected with my culture because it feels like there's a part of me still missing. And there will always be a part of me missing until I actually discover that.
So that was a good question, and I feel like it's really good for transracial people, like the girl Rebecca who was black and was adopted by a white family. I'm white and I was adopted by a white family, so the cultural sense, I don't feel like there's a disconnect between my family and my birth family but my heritage or culture. But it is interesting because I was born in Texas and they're all still living in Texas. And Texas is a super, not on a level of another country, of course, or culture, but they're very different I grew up in New York. Even talking to my half sister, half brother, they grew up completely differently. I didn't know what a lot of things they were talking about. They would do crawfish broils, and my half brother hunts wild pigs, and that whole Texas life, and especially because they grew up in a really small town. That part I'm I can't really relate to the Texas mindset, and I don't really feel too connected to it.
I would adopt. 3, 2, 1.
It's just personal issues with me not having that blood connection to anyone. But if the adoption scenario ever came up, I would definitely not be opposed to it. It's just right now, I would want my own kids if I had them.
A part of me wants to do that as well. I want to have my own child. But then another part of me, I want to be able to get kids that are grown and that they're 10 years old and their whole life has been horrible, and I'm the one that's going to give them a second chance. But that's only because of what I went through.
You can do both, absolutely. But also for me, I don't want to adopt out of obligation of feeling like I need to adopt because I'm an adoptee. That doesn't create a healthy environment either, where I feel like I had to adopt. I've always kind of teetered on this line, and until I personally figure out what works best for me, I'm just nothing's coming over here for a while.
I would adopt. That's a good question. Oh wow. So they have an Instagram poll prediction for what they think what the audience thinks that they'll say, and 90% said they would agree and they would adopt. I agree. I don't think you should adopt if you just feel like you have to give back because you're adopted, so now you should adopt. That's not, she said, that's not a healthy mindset, I think, or that you have to do that because you owe it or something. I don't really, I agree with her. Oh, they didn't even really talk about that one a lot. I was not open to adopting when I was younger. Also, I wasn't really thinking about it because I wasn't really thinking about having kids at that point, obviously. But now that I am older and married, I am open to adopting, but I would want to have my own kids first. So my husband, Chris, and I, you guys know, my husband and I say we would have 2 and maybe adopt 1 or something like that. Obviously you can't plan out your life in that way, but I would be open to it now more so than before. But I do know that there's a lot of things that come with it. And I would love to adopt a child from the Dominican Republic, but if you've seen my adoption in the Dominican Republic video, it's super hard to adopt from there. I would just want to make sure I'm doing it correctly because there's a lot of issues with international adoption. I would be open to like foster care to adopt too.
Parents should be mindful when it comes to cross-racial or cross-cultural adoption. 3, 2, 1.
I think mindful is like a good word to use. Just because your parents are different race doesn't mean that they like love you any less or anything like that. Like they should be mindful and take into consideration that you will have like a more difficult time trying to like navigate and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't adopt in different races.
When you're adopting a child and you're taking them into your home, no matter what race they are, you still, I feel like as an adoptive parent, have a responsibility to kind of connect them to their culture. Just acknowledge it, you know? I don't think they need to be like, you need to like go to Dia de los Muertos because you're Mexican. Like, no, if you want, you can. Just know it's something that your culture does.
I feel that I've kind of went through an identity crisis, especially over the last few years as I'm trying to connect with my culture. I was completely unaware. I was very ignorant to it. And I regret that because I could feel a lot more confident in myself. But because I kind of had to do it on my own because my parents didn't do that, it's been a lot harder to identify with like white, Asian, like where am I in the spectrum of this? I wish they would have just like helped me embrace the culture a little more rather than look at me as a little child going, I hate being Asian, and they just laugh and go, ha ha ha, because again, they've never experienced that in their life, so they don't understand.
I feel like mindful is a very kind of coddly term for it. For me, I was called the N-word when I was literally a child. I had people come up and to me and pet me like I was in a petting zoo. I've gotten spit on, I've gotten all kinds of things, and I couldn't go to my family because they don't know anything. They're white, they were privileged enough to never, ever have to think about these things. But there's a whole nother set of things that come along with raising children of color. You have to be willing to put your life on the line for your child of color. It's not, oh, they didn't mean it like that. Oh, they're just from the older generation. They don't understand. No, like those are the kind of responses I still get to this day, and it has literally ruined relationships in my family because they're so uncomfortable just talking about racism. You're no longer a white family. You're a family of multiple races. Embrace all of it, and it's time to just put the color blind bullshit aside and really get down to these issues because it is literally killing people, and to me, it's just not tolerant at all.
That was great. I'm gonna move on to this line.
I think that was a really good one. Like exactly what she said. If you can't, what I was saying before, like you're not saving a child from Africa or whatever. If you need to like keep their culture. I think that's so important. And I've read, a lot about it, being adopted and international adoption. I used to want to adopt from another country besides DR. But I feel like you really need to have that cultural tie to it for them, or at least what Alexis is her name, the Asian one, was saying, like her family didn't really try to ingrain her in her culture. I think it's really important because then you grow up and you're like confused. And then another thing is like connecting to the language too, because I know other people who are adopted but don't speak the language of the country they're adopted from, and then they are on this like journey of discovering themselves and where they're from, and then they can't like communicate with their family or just with anyone from that culture in general. So I think that's important too. Also, if you have a kid from foster care, if you're fostering a child, I think it's required that you expose them to their culture. So if you have a Mexican child, you need to bring them to festivals or different like educational events. So it's interesting that like once you adopt a child that there's no kind of like regulation or anything like that, because I guess there's no one kind of like, once you're adopted officially, there's no like check-ins and stuff because it's not foster care. But I do think it's something that should be like required or talked about with the adopted families. That's my opinion, and that's what I would do if I had a child from another culture. A pretty interesting story that I have on like connecting with my half sister and my birth mom and how that went and everything. So maybe I can tell that story one day. But I feel lucky that I did, and you know, it's fine now, and they all came to my wedding, which was really nice. So yeah, it's cool. It's like weird being adopted, but it's normal for me. Adoption's so interesting to me. But I've unfortunately heard a lot of bad stories about adoption and adoptive parents and how they treat their adopted kids, and you know, that's really sad because I've had the complete opposite experience. Encourage people to adopt, but do it with like the right heart. If you have any video requests, please comment them below. I love to do videos that are requested. Then I know that I'm doing things that you guys are interested in, and I'm open to doing like a lot of different videos. I wanted to do a clothing haul, bathing suit haul type thing now that summer is coming, but I'm kind of nervous, so I don't know if I'll do that. Make sure you hit subscribe, turn on notifications. YouTube's been weird. If you don't have notifications turned on, you might not see my videos on your feed at all. And if you're not like thinking about me and you're not like going to my page, you might miss a video. I also am like looking for a new channel name, so if you have any suggestions, feel free to comment them below. I'd be really appreciative. And of course, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you're adopted or you have an experience with it in any way, let me know what you think about any of these questions that Jubilee asked this group of adoptees. Thank you so much for watching. New video next week, and I will see you guys soon.